Hey, folks. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Matt Horwitz at breakthefear.com.
And I'm Scott Brills from scottbrills.com.
Scott Brills, Brills.
That's correct.
So Scott, man, tell me, what have you been up to lately? I mean, we've been chatting, but what's been going on in the life of you?
Well, I just got back to the U.S. after being gone for about 8 months straight, and over 5 months of those were spent in Africa, driving through Africa, driving from London to Cape Town to be precise. And I'm sure we'll talk about that at another time. But it was
wait for those who don't know, where is Cape Town? For those who don't know, I'm going to play
Cape
dummy
Town,
here.
South Africa. So it's about 14,000 miles of driving. We were doing this as a charity endeavor. Been planning it out for more than a year, and then it took about 5 months to actually do it. And so just got back a few weeks ago, and I'm slowly reintegrating with quote unquote normal society here in the States. It's a little bit weird, getting used to everything, being in bars and clubs, and not being in the open plains with antelope and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I think I'm just taking it slow, and I'll be able to get back to normal here soon.
And how many countries was it? Was it 26 or was it 30? I know the details have changed a little bit, but you basically drove from. I mean, you started in the UK, and then I think did you drive down through France or Italy, and then you shipped the car over to Tunisia, North Africa, and then you drove across North Africa, then you drove down East Africa, and I mean, this guy's it was quite a trip, quite a journey to be following along. What were how many countries was it?
It was 24 during the actual journey, and then I visited another 6 at different times during the year. So the grand total for 2012 was 30 countries in 1 year, 30 countries on 6 continents.
Man,
1 year, which is crazy even for me.
I'm gonna catch up to you in about. We'll get into this as we go through our stories, but I'll be catching up to you, not this year, but in a few. I just was in one country this year, Scott. So you got me up a little bit this year, just by a few, few.
But you've gotten around as well. I know you just recently moved, and we originally met in New York, and then you're hanging out in Philly, and now you're in Florida. What's up with that?
Yeah, so let's see, the short story was for the past year or so, I was back up in Pennsylvania, and I grew up outside of Philadelphia, about 45 minutes north of Philadelphia. And, originally was going back to kind of visit family and things of that sort. And, a lot of things changed. And, sometimes you kind of just have to, with life, you kind of roll with the punches, go with the flow, so to say. So I was there for actually a year, but it was great because in August and September, had a fantastic opportunity. I went over to the Middle East, and I traveled all around Israel for about 60 days, and that was in August and September. I got back, flew back into JFK in New York in October, and was just sort of tying up loose ends, things of that sort. But I knew that I did not want to do another winter. I just can't. The cold weather. I just can't stand the cold weather. I lived in Miami for a year, about a year and a half ago, and completely changed my paradigm. Everybody down here in South Florida just thinks everybody up north is crazy. Like, why do they live?
Very jealous. I'm very jealous. Good thing you're not here.
Wait. What's the temperature where you are right now?
I think last night I haven't been out yet today. I think last night was it was about 20 degrees.
20 degrees Fahrenheit. What's that like? Negative 10 Celsius?
Yeah, something like that. And then with the wind chill, it was getting down even colder than that, below zero. So yeah. Negative 20 Celsius, stuff like that.
So right now it's we're recording this in January, and it's currently about 83 degrees Fahrenheit. I guess that's probably like 26, 27 maybe, 27 Celsius. I'm just conscious of the conversions. We'll have to use our metric and our US measurements. But anyways, so I got back to New York in October. It spent most of November and the beginning of December, kind of packing, tying up some loose ends. There were some things I needed to take care of. And mid-December, I hit the road. And this was the funny part, was that last time I moved down to Miami, I moved in with somebody. I just moved right in, so I didn't have to worry about logistics of finding a place to rent or, taking care of, let's say, silly things like buying pots and pans and, trash cans and, these little kind of things that we just sort of take for granted in our everyday life. But anyway, anyway, everything I owned, I stuffed it into my car. I didn't leave anything in storage. Hit the road, drove. It was about 24 hours in the car. But I broke it out over a couple of days. Visited some friends in Virginia and in Orlando, Florida. But didn't know where I was going to stay, things of that sort. So I ended up sleeping in the car a few nights. It was a little hectic. For definitely about a week. But anyway, here I am now. I found a nice place. I'm in Midtown Miami, and I'm going to be here for the rough plan is about 24 months or so, focusing on the businesses, building up building up the streams of income to be able to kind of depart and be on a really long-term travel in about 2015. So we'll see how things go from there.
Get that passive income coming in.
Yeah, that's.
I like it.
I think people are catching on because I'm currently doing a few things, but right now I've been doing some WordPress teaching and consulting, basically just teaching people how to build websites, and I teach them over Skype. And when people call, they see my ads and they think like, oh, can we meet in LA like later like tomorrow? And I'm like, well, actually, I'm not in California. And I tell them like, my work doesn't keep me to a city. And they're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I heard a lot of these new businesses. People are so word's spreading.
You're one of those newfangled kids doing your internet things.
Yeah, but so what do you have? So you just got back. When did you land back in the States?
On the 18th, I wanted to be back before Christmas. So just about a week before Christmas, spent Christmas with the family. It was the first time in a couple of years I've been back for Christmas. And since then, I've just, like I said, slowly been trying to reintegrate myself, trying to get some work done. I've been failing miserably at it because I've been hanging out with friends, telling the story of the Africa trip every single night, hanging out with somebody else and grabbing drinks and telling them the saga of our 5-month crazy trip.
Yeah. So what's been one of the stories that you've told a bunch of times and that it's well rehearsed, and you tell us you have a juicy one for us, or one that's that stands out that people have a nice reaction to.
So usually at least lately, I've been trying to actually get people together and have them sit down so I can tell them the whole thing, from start to finish, and kind of catch them up, because a lot of people, they haven't been following along all the time because, well, we stopped the blog halfway through because it just became too tough for us to maintain it, and just now trying to finish it up. But
so because of what, internet connection, or just like
just problems.
And wait, so for those who don't know the details, I always interrupt you, Scott, but let's back it up a second. You were with how many people? I know you were in two Subaru cars that you dressed up like shoes, hence the word Subaru. You were called Team Subaru. But how many people were you in? I know you were cramped in like close quarters, but you were on the road for a long time with a bunch of people. What are the details around that?
So it was at any one time 4 to 8 people. 4 to 7, and then there was another one that had to leave 3 days in because she broke her leg while she was dancing at a castle. That's a whole other story. Like I said, we'll get into the details later on. But there was a core group of 5 people, and we had 2 old Subarus that we dressed up with canvas-like material to make them look like a pair of Converse Chuck Taylor sneakers, and complete with like a bow tie on the top and everything. And yeah, we did that.
Why'd you make the shoes look like? I keep calling them shoes. Why'd you make the cars look like shoes?
You can call them shoe cars. That's kind of what we did. We just thought it would be kind of a crazy idea. We were trying to raise money to build a school and orphanage in Ethiopia, and to make ourselves stand out even more, we decided to make them look like shoes. It was actually the idea of my buddy Joe, who went with us. He was one of the team members to do that, and it required a lot of time and effort, especially on his part and our other teammate Emily, to actually get them to look like that. But they turned out beautifully. And
tell me about, when you're finished, tell people about the tents, and where did you guys sleep that you had?
Right. We had roof tents. So we had tents on top of the cars that kind of folded out, and you could sleep 2 or 3 people in each one. And so a lot of times we just sleep on top of the car, especially if there wasn't any hotels or anything around, like a cheap hotel, $5 a night, $10 a night. We just opted to stay on top of the cars. And yeah, that was how we lived for months, all of us together. And what you asked before about a story, I mean, yeah, there's tons of stories, but I've been trying to just kind of give out like the Twitter version of the trip. That's like, hey, tell me about it, but we only have a few minutes, so I'm like, well, hey, we'll sit down, we'll talk about it later on. But for right now, let's see, how do I usually term this? I was like, so you got shoe cars, team drama, love triangle, firearms, bandits, embassy burnings. Was it countries that are closed to Americans? Safari, and what else? Oh, and a few hospital visits, including a broken leg, broken fractured foot, a lacerated leg, severe bacterial infection, and a
Let's not get into the hospital stories right off the bat. We might scare people from traveling.
But like I said, that's a Twitter version, so it gets them interested, and then later on we can sit down over drinks. I can tell them the whole thing, which usually takes like an hour and a half or so.
The firearms part sparked my interest, I'll be honest. But do you want to tell us a mini story, or do you want to come back around to it?
We'll come back around to it. If I tell one story, I'm just going to end up telling all of them.
Hey, I don't think we'd mind. I bet you listeners are like, what the hell is this guy? This guy's crazy. I got to hear one of these stories. But
it'll be like a cliffhanger, you know? It'll be a cliffhanger. It'll keep people coming back.
Now, Scott, I always tell you this. I always admire many of your different, I guess we could call it an attitude, but I guess different mindsets and things like that, as you kind of have this, calmness. And I think you've told me that you've learned that during travel to just sort of, that when things happen that are really outside of your control, trying to fight against them or, go against the reality, pretend it didn't happen. Because I remember I happened to jump on Facebook and there's like a picture of you and your foot with like a bunch of stitches or something. You're like, yeah, I stepped on what'd you step on? Broken glass and you went to the hospital? Is that, I know you didn't want to tell a story, but somehow that I went into it anyway.
I guess you're going to get one out of me no matter what. I was beer and liquor in Egypt is pretty tightly controlled, being a Muslim country, and so you can still get it, but you have to go to a duty-free store. So every so often, generally every day, once we had about 7 people living in the same area, every day we'd go on beer runs into town. We were on an island. We rented out a house because we couldn't get into Sudan because they closed it to Americans, and it took us a month in Egypt to try to get our way in. So we would go across the river on a ferry boat into town, grab beers, come back. So on this particular occasion, I grabbed about 12 glass bottles of beer, threw them in a duty-free bag, which was pretty tight. It was strong enough to carry the bottles and everything. So I went walking for about a mile back down to the other side of the city to catch the ferry to go back home. And right near the ferry dock, I felt the bag just kind of, the seam open up, and I instinctively leaned over and put my hand behind my back to catch the bottles as they were coming out, to kind of plug up the bag.
They were hung. They was hung over your back.
Yeah, like Santa Claus.
Right.
And so I reached back to try to prevent them all from smashing on the ground. There's this liquid gold I'm carrying right here. And I wasn't quick enough. One of the bottles smashed. I saved all the other ones, but one of them smashed right next to my leg. And in a freak of nature accident, just kind of sliced through the back of my leg. It exploded on the ground, and a piece of glass sliced right through the back of my leg.
Oh, so you didn't step on it? The glass fell and cut you?
Fell, and then a piece ricocheted, and then it went like through the back of my leg.
The hell? How did a piece of glass get so much trajectory to your leg?
I know. It's really weird. I was wearing sandals, and it basically flew up above my sandals and cut me right across the back of the leg, and my sandals started filling up with blood. I looked down at my leg, and I'm like, uh-oh, this isn't good. So I sit down, and I had a few other people with me, and they're like, what happened? I was like, the bottle broke, and I seem to be bleeding a lot. And so I think, who was it? It was Gemma who was joining us. They just joined us, Gemma and Bryn, who were doing something similar, and we kind of stayed together for a while. We ended up convoying. So they were living at the house with us for a while, and she was with us, and she went to grab some tissues to staunch the blood flow. And Mallory, who was one of my teammates, went off to grab some like ointment or alcohol, something to flush the wound out with.
Yeah.
So Gemma comes back with some tissues. I put it on the back of my leg to stop the blood flow, and all of a sudden it starts burning because they're scented tissues and they're scented with like alcohol.
Oh man!
The side of this really deep wound in the leg. It's like and then Mallory comes back with some stuff to put on the wound, and it's like hydrogen peroxide. And we put it on the wound. I almost passed out because we just took those scented tissues, put a bunch of this stuff all over them, stuffed it inside of the wound to make sure that we clean it out and there wasn't any glass or anything in there. And wow, that hurt. That hurt a lot.
Ow.
Up hobbling to the ferry. We got across. I hobbled back to the house. Joe, one of my other teammates, was there, and he's a volunteer EMT, luckily for me. And so he said, hey, this is really, really deep. We're going to have to go to the hospital, or I've got a staple gun with me.
No way. Get the hell out of here.
Yep, he had a staple gun, and he was dying to use this thing the whole trip. And I just gave him the reason. And I said, man, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, it's really deep.
Is this a medical staple gun or just a regular staple gun?
Staple gun. Yeah, it's all hygienic and everything.
Okay.
I laid down after a couple drinks. I laid down on the couch, and he took the staple gun and was just like 5 times in my leg, and then I was all stapled up. And for the next 10 days, I was pretty incapacitated. Like I could hop around, and that's it.
Can you tell me what it feels like to have a? Now it was weird because I feel like I remember when it wasn't even that long ago. I was going to say when I was, a few years back, my brother used to do this thing where he would take a regular staple, open it up so it's like kind of elongated, where you can just like hit it into the wall or something, and he would just staple right into his arm and then just pull it out. And I was like, there's no way in hell I'm trying that. I mean, it didn't look painful, but it just looked so freaky. What is it? Were you like did he give you a local anesthesia, or did he just staple the back of your leg?
No anesthetic. You kind of put some alcohol around the edges to prep the area and clean it out as best as you can. And then he's like, I can give you a local anesthetic. He had some syringes. We had a pretty nice medical bag that he had prepared for the trip. So we had a lot of stuff. And luckily for us, he knew how to use it. And he's like, I can give you the anesthetic, but it's going to require like 4 injections around the site.
Oh, man.
Or than the staples will anyway. So I like to go without the anesthetic.
Badass.
Pulled it up 10 days later. We took him out. It said online, it says leave him in for 7 to 10 days. The thing opened right back up again. He had to put another 4 staples in, and then I waited 30 days, and it had healed up. And at this point, I've got a pretty nice scar on the back of my leg. But I think, I didn't know this at the time, but I'm pretty sure it cut the edges of the fringe of my Achilles tendon because it's still sore. So in the morning, it takes a while before I'm able to walk normally. It's still sore. And so, 4.5 months later, I'm still not recovered. I can't really run, but I hope to get back, to 100% somewhere in the next few months.
Damn! I didn't know it was that. I didn't know the aftermath was that, hard to deal with. So, rest up, man. Rest up.
And worse, I was lucky that it wasn't. It didn't go even farther in, because if it snapped my hamstring, who knows? Maybe I would have had to go home at that point.
Yeah. But it seems like a lot of times that sometimes accidents that happen while traveling are accidents that could happen anywhere. It just so happens to be while you're, like silly things like slipping and falling and things of that sort. Did you find that? Well, I guess we don't go into too many stories, but I'm just thinking about traveling in general. That sometimes. People in general think like traveling is highly dangerous, and hearing your stories are definitely not a little bit not normal, but I think most accidents that happen while traveling are like, just saying don't be scared to step out there and explore things in the world. A bottle of beer dropping can happen anywhere. It doesn't happen in certain parts of the world and not in others.
All the other injuries were the same way. We had a girl break her leg while she was dancing. We had a guy fracture his foot while he was walking around a historical site just because he wasn't looking where he was walking. The panic attack was kind of interesting. And that, and then you have the bacterial infection, which, I have been really lucky. I've traveled all around the world. I don't really have any experience with getting ill because of local foods. I stick primarily to local foods. I eat all the same stuff that locals will eat, including street food, and I've never gotten severely sick. But our teammate Joe, the EMT, he did get sick after our visit to Somaliland, and it was pretty bad. He had a high fever, a bit delusional. He had to be rushed 10 hours to Addis Ababa to the hospital.
Jeez.
And I've known people that have had similar things happen here at a fast food place or whatever. So it's, none of the injuries were caused because, rebels attacked us or something like that. It's all stuff that could have very well just happened at home.
Right. I hear you. Yeah. So looking on our notes here, let's jump themes a little bit and talk about, I don't know, from time to time with me, I always have these what I just call recurring themes, whether it's like an epiphany or something I read or study or just sort of some realization I have in my business. The one that's kind of hit me, and tell me how you think about this, because you've been working on sort of one business for definitely for quite some years. And I think that when a lot of people are out there on the internet, reading blogs or listening to other podcasts or content of any sort, that they, people are when people are showing you a story, they're showing you kind of the 5% or the sliver of success and things of that sort. And I think we can kind of get blindsided into thinking that taking on a big project we can do it all in 6 months or do it all in less than that. And when I started this new business of mine online, I started in 2010, and when I started, I thought it would take me 3 to 4 months. And here I am, 25 months, over 2 years into it, and now just gaining the maturity and the insight and how much I've had to go through in terms of learning and taking action and producing and all these things.
How long did it take before your first dollar? Metric.
It was over. I started this in late. I'm trying to think. Was it this? It was about a year and a half. Probably it was about a year and a half. Oh no, you know what? The first time I launched it, and this is one area that I focus on, is I have some online classes. I'm still building up a few more, but they basically help new entrepreneurs get started with their business. We teach them basically how to file certain legal documents and things of that sort. And more details will come as the business progresses. But I still have a lot more work to do. But right off the bat, though, I think about 6 months into it, I created like a really, it was just a shady, it was just there was no website. It was just like a landing page with a really bad video and a product. And I think like 2 people bought it for $99. And I remember, it still is a little bit surreal. I think I've had maybe like 30 plus customers at this point with one of the products. But when you first generate a sale that comes from online, it's like not even real when it happens. You're like, what? Who? How did they do it? Right. What did they think? Right. Like, you want to know exactly. And I remember when I talked to the woman on the phone, because I think she emailed me with a question, she was definitely very skeptical. I clearly remember hearing that in her voice, that she was very skeptical of it, because I had a kind of a shady, marketing, I had a shady system set up. Like, there was just, we were advertising in certain places, and then traffic came to a page, and then all they did was buy the product. There was no educational content, there were no videos and things of that sort.
Oh, wow.
So then
sight
after that,
unseen.
Yeah, it was like almost sight unseen. It was just basically a sales page, and then I realized, like, damn, my product, I had to revamp the product itself. So I did hit like 2 sales, out of the gate, but then it was another year or so before I rebuilt both the course and the front end of the website and things of that sort. But going back to this theme, is I realized that, and I think a lot of cliche sayings are cliche for a reason. It's because everyone talks about them, no one does them. So you just hear it all the time, and it just becomes so silly. But, they say that, things that are worthwhile definitely, take time. So that's the theme I'm getting at, is realizing, like, for listeners out there, whatever you're working on, whether it's a business project, an artistic project, a nonprofit project, or any kind of project of your own, are you willing to put in the time it takes? Because I think that's why most people drop out in life. They think there's kind of this contrast. You look in the media, and everything in the media is this instant, quick results, instant gratification, right? and everybody talks about it like they're immune to it, but everybody falls victim to like chasing these quick results. And I'm realizing now, after 2 years into it, I tell people, look, I'm willing to put in 3 to 5 more years, and I'm willing to sacrifice and go through the struggles in that, because I know that what I'm working on, how much that aligns with my lifestyle. So right. I know that was a long explanation of it, but wanted to get your insight on what's your, when you have an idea for a project, whether it be an adventure, a philanthropic one, or a business, Scott, do you have like the foresight to see 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line? And do you think that people will screw themselves over if they're only looking, 6 months to a year out? What is your take on that?
No, I don't think you have to have a long-term plan. What I try to do is to just go for the MVP as quick as possible. So, have a game plan, and you can plan as far ahead as you like, and that might help depending on what kind of business you're trying to do. But to go for the MVP, the minimum viable product, I'm very detail-oriented, and so over the years, starting up businesses or personal projects I've done, I tended to get stuck and mired in the details. And oftentimes, I would just quit or lose interest halfway through because I'm making it a lot harder than it needs to be.
Right.
I'm putting way too much into the planning and the details and trying not to actually put something out there until it's perfect. And so that makes it so that the project is actually never put out there. And so I realized this a couple of years ago, and I've been trying to just put stuff out there. Case in point, my blog, which was on the back burner for forever, and I still really need to put a lot more time into it. But instead of obsessing over how it's going to look and the theme and everything, which I've been doing for years, and that's why I hadn't started it, I picked a very simple theme, and I just started writing. And then, okay, it's up there. Well, that's the biggest hurdle, is actually getting it up there and writing that first post.
Right.
After that, the WordPress platform I have it on, that, of course, a lot of websites use. It really makes it really easy to just log in from anywhere and just start typing and type a story. So you've already removed that barrier of entry. And now it's just about, okay, make that a priority. Okay, I'm going to write once a week. Or, you're going to do whatever. Like you said, you're going to revamp your business product and to make it look nicer and to try different sales techniques and whatnot.
Right.
And that's great. But you had it up there.
I had it up.
Put it up.
I built
it up, and people actually bought it. But it doesn't matter if people buy it or not. It's just a matter of actually putting it up there, and then you can go back and then you can look at the details once it's already up and once you already have an MVP.
Definitely, I think that's one of the best sort of it's not even a trick. It's just a mindset. And I'm going to use the word entrepreneur, but I know that a lot of people sometimes get turned off by the words, business, entrepreneur, sales, things of that sort. But my definition, the way I like to look at entrepreneurship is if you look at the root word, is it French? Or I believe it's French. Now that I was like Latin, here I go with this great story, and then I forget where the country of origin. But yeah,
you get tired in the details.
Basically, if you look at the etymology, the history of the word entrepreneurship, it has something to do with drawing from without. Something like basically taking. For me, I look at it as taking something that exists in the non-physical realm. Like you have this idea, you have this insight, you want to do this. How do you take that idea that's in your head and how do you put it into 3D reality? I think is one of the most challenging and rewarding aspects. But that's the way that I look at entrepreneurship. So that if you're a artist, you're doing the same thing. If you envision something in your head, how do you get that onto oil and canvas, or how do you get that into your medium? And I totally just lost my my train of thought. You were talking about the MVP. Yeah, instead of perfecting it in your mind, just build the shit. Just get it out there as quickly as can. Whether it's a website, whether it's a blog, whether it's a piece of art, whether it's a first draft, a novel, a piece of artwork, just get it out there and get some real world feedback, because no one else can see it when it's in your head. And I think it's just a mindset. I mean, it's. What I do with all my websites is, it's fun. I don't necessarily need to tell people like, oh, go to www.whatever, but I build the websites live. So there's traffic that will come to my website when it's half built, when it's 30% built. So like some buttons don't work, pages don't work, but I don't care, because you know what? Every now and then someone will send in a message, and the sooner that I can interface with the real world, the sooner I can interface with a customer and get some feedback from them, then you can tweak and model and things of that sort. And I think it's about just launching, and then this continual kind of bridging this to what I was saying about thinking long term is that, think long term, but at first do that MVP, get that minimum viable product, get it out to the market as quickly as you can, and then be willing to just keep tweaking and keep refining it, and to know that when you look at any big business or anybody out there who's successful, you're seeing some of their more refined work, and they've been launching stuff for a long time, but then they're just continually tweaking and testing things of that sort. And I think the majority of viewers, of audiences, will won't even see your work until it's done, and the few people that see it when it's not done, who cares? Just get it out there.
Yeah, doesn't matter. People are often afraid of, okay, it's not all perfect. I mean, I do the same thing. It's not perfect. I don't want to show it to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong mindset. It's not perfect, so you should show it to people. You should show it to people and get the feedback and then change it based on that. I mean, how else are you going to know what works and what doesn't?
Yeah. Can you say that again? Because I think that little I don't know what you did if you flipped the sentence or you just took a pause, but that was a big insight. What was that one again?
Well, people think it's not perfect, so I don't want to show it to people. But it's because it's not perfect that you should show it to people. Exactly.
So you can get that feedback and have your idea, have your baby, quote unquote, have that interface, have that interact with people to see how they perceive it, to see if it's a service or a product or something that they see of value. I think that's a big insight. And I think there is I'm gonna take that theme of creativity and tie it into our next topic for what we wanted to share today. Creative ways. I'll just jump right into it because I don't have too good of a segue. But creative ways Scott and I wanted to talk about some creative ways that we've been able to, creative ways to travel, and also creative ways to reduce expenses, whether or not you're living in a place or you're traveling, and things of that sort. Because I think that you hear the media, that things are. I don't know. I don't pay attention to that bullshit, frankly. But I know for a lot of people, it can affect them. And for some things, I mean, when I go to the store now and I'm like buying milk, and I'm like, when I go to the grocery store, it's like everything is $5. Box of cereal is $5. Milk is $5. Everything just seems to be $5. And I'm like, what the hell? Before you know it, you spend $100 and on groceries, and it's too often. So I always come back to like the life skill of creativity and resourcefulness will really kind of make life a lot easier for you if you choose to go that route. If you choose not to, and you just sort of follow the status quo, things are going to become very challenging for people. So, Scott, let's jump over to you and tell me about some creative ways to reduce expensive or creative ways, while traveling. Take either one you want.
Yeah. So last year I was gone. I was on the road for about 9 months out of the year, and because I do all the traveling, I've kind of embraced a minimalist lifestyle because you can't take everything with you. There's a great piece by George Carlin where he talks about owning stuff, and why do you have a house? It's to put your stuff in, and then you get too much stuff. Oh, you have to get another house. You got to get a bigger house, and it talks about, okay, well, now you're going traveling, and so you have to determine like what out of your stuff you want to take with you traveling. Only your most precious stuff that you need to have with you, and then he even goes further into it where you're taking a side trip from your hotel when you're traveling. Now you got to really reduce it down and be like, okay, what out of my most precious stuff is like the stuff I really, really need, and then you put that into a smaller bag, and it's a really great piece. I'll have to link to it on the page, but
all right, I'll write that down.
I've really embraced minimalism as a tool to gain freedom and independence, because when you're traveling, and you can still take too much when you travel. I see it all the time, and I used to do this too back 10 years ago when I started. And I would just bring tons of clothing. I'd bring a change of clothing for 2 weeks and whatnot. And so recently, this will be another Africa story. I'm going to be tying in a lot of things with Africa this year. I can already see it.
You have to, man. You had so much damn experience.
There's like a story from the Africa trip that relates to every facet of life. I love it. But in Tunisia, so our first night in Africa, I had most of my clothing stolen. And our teammate had Scott from Bangkok also had most of his clothing stolen. So here we are. we're just a couple weeks into the trip. First night in Africa, car window gets smashed. Both of our like 75-liter backpacks full of clothing, hard drives, a bunch of other stuff stolen.
Oh, shit.
We had no chance of getting it back. And so at that point, you have to adapt, and that's really the biggest skill you can have as a traveler is just adaptation and going with the flow.
Yeah.
First things first, we had to fix that hole in the window because until we did, the car wasn't secure, and you can't drive with an open window through the Sahara for very long without getting very sandy. So we focused on that, and I had the clothes I was wearing. I had maybe another change of clothes, one more pair of shorts, a couple pairs of underwear, one pair of socks. Long story short, I completed the trip, the next few months of the trip, all the way through Africa from Tunisia with just the stuff I had. I had another T-shirt or two along the way, but for all intents and purposes, I was just left with what I had at that point, which was just a day pack.
And how many clothes did you use across that that trip? Like how many pairs of jeans, how many shirts, like that, how many socks?
So my jeans were stolen. I had no long pants with me anymore, so I had 2 pairs of shorts, 3 T-shirts, 3 pairs of underwear, 1 pair of socks, 1 pair of sandals, 1 pair of shoes.
1 pair of socks?
Yeah, 1 pair of socks. So needless to say, I just upped my washing schedule. So I did a lot of washing in hotel sinks and whatnot, and I got through the trip with just only the clothing that I had. And even though I said I embraced minimalism even before this trip, that really showed me, when you're forced to experience it like that, sometimes events like that can open up new windows on life. And so it showed me that really I don't need as much clothing as I take. Even though I don't bring a lot, I can survive on a lot less than what I already take. So I'll be keeping that in mind this year, and I've already been thinking, all the traveling I'll be doing in the upcoming months. Maybe I'll just stick with an overhead bag, even if it'll be a few weeks in Europe or whatnot. I should be able to do it. If I did it through Africa, I can do it anywhere. And so I look forward to traveling light this year and in the coming years.
Yeah, I think so many people don't realize that when you have a lot of physical crap, you have your essentials, the things that you value, whatever it be, especially these days, you have your computer, you have your cell phone, maybe you have some books and some clothes and things like that sort. But I think a lot of people don't realize how much that all of this crap and clutter in their life affects them in ways that they don't notice, right? They feel overwhelmed, they feel stressed out, they can't leave their house for too long because they have to water all of their plants and they just have so much
plants.
Of this maintenance. And I know, plants are beautiful, but right now it's jumping into basically
too much of a commitment. Those plants, they're a big commitment.
You really have to. If you're the kind of person that wants to be somewhere and you want to travel and things of that sort, you really need to look at what you've committed to. And if you have a lot of plants, you have committed yourself to watering these things, once every 5 days. So now, if you want to travel somewhere, you have to get someone to water your plants, and it's like another one of these things that just is kind of draining on or sapping your energy. And if you have all of this other crap and clutter, that elimination, basically eliminating the unnecessary things in life, so that you can figure out what you value in life and what you want to do, where you want to go.
Yep, commitments and possessions. Commitments and possessions are 2 of the main things that get in the way of your dreams, whether that be travel or something else.
Totally.
If you have too many commitments, you don't have the time to put towards, your own personal projects or your goals. And so, like you're saying, you just have to whittle those away or just not get into it in the first place. And you'd be surprised at how much time suddenly opens up.
Yeah, it's a number of people have approached me. Back from, let's say, like 2006 to about 2010, 2011, my main business was, I sold real estate and did some other real estate investing on the side. And there were people from time to time who would always approach me with these business ideas and want to partner up and things of that sort. And I immediately just saw, where's my exit strategy? I don't want to be with, this person. I knew that our values were somewhat in alignment in some areas, but their values weren't the same as mine in terms of, wanting to travel and things of that sort. So I didn't take on those commitments because I knew that, if in 5 years I don't want to do this anymore, how can I kind of shift? And for me, flexibility is like, basically, if you think about scalability in businesses on a large enterprise, is like, how can that business, increase production and decrease production in the simple, most effective manner? And I look at scalability in my life, right? Like I have a new little, like I've been basically teaching people how to build websites, and this little business model that I've set up is so minimalistic. It's crazy. I can turn this thing up and down. Like I have a friend who's coming down to visit in next month for about 2 weeks, and I'm just going to go ahead, and the people who help me run my ads, I'm just like, hey, don't post. All I have to do is send an email, and I can turn the volume down, and then I can turn it back up. And I think you said it well too, with possessions and commitments. Really, people just need to look at their own damn life and realize, like, do you have too many commitments and do you have too much shit? And if you do, are you willing to step up and make some changes in those areas? Because if not, you're just going to hate yourself in 5 years for it.
It's kind of a semi-Buddhist philosophy about, you own your possessions, or do your possessions own you?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And attachment to those possessions is what causes suffering in your life, because you're scared of losing it, or you do lose it, or something gets destroyed or stolen, and that causes a lot of the unhappiness in life. And so it's something that I always think about. It's funny you bring up basically exit strategies. Every time you get involved in something, whether it be, and this may sound kind of messed up to some people, but when you get involved in a relationship, be it personal or work, or you start up a company, or you do pretty much anything, you buy a dog, you buy a plant.
Exactly.
Certain people like us, we always have to devise an exit strategy before we commit ourselves to this. Right. This endeavor or this plant. Right. And that may sound very weird to some people, but it's true. You always have to, because if you value freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it, that's just something you have to think about.
Really, yeah. And Scott, I mean, in 2010, a lot of things happened to me that year, and I had always wanted to really kind of. I was done. I lived in Philadelphia. I felt complete with the city, and I realized that I had a pretty successful business. I was working less than part time. I call it third time. I was working third time, and I was making I was making a full-time income. I was selling houses. I took a few trips a year. I had a nice little community of like friends and activities and things of this sort. But I really knew that I wanted to get out and I wanted to travel even more. And if I was going to continue to sell real estate as a sales agent, I would just be driving the stake down further and further and further into this geographic location. And I started to learn about people who were, had businesses that didn't depend on a location. They could run them from anywhere, basically, just in terms of getting into systems thinking, right? Thinking about automation, thinking about systems, scalability, right. Just sort of a shift in philosophy in that area. So anyway, I basically uprooted my stake. I literally quit pretty much cold turkey. I called up now I didn't just quit cold turkey and lose all my income streams. I set up, again, going back to creativity, I referred some clients to some people I had relationships with. So I could still receive some income here and there based on some referral deals I set up with, commissions and things of that sort. And there's some other streams of income I have that come from real estate. And it was scary. It was about a 90-day period where I was into minimalism. I understood it, but I wasn't a minimalist. I had a lot of shit. I had a basement full of tools. I owned 2 vehicles. I had a car and a truck. And I basically called all of my clients, told them I was moving. I was going to Florida. I sold my truck. I got rid of all my tools. I had 3 computers. I had 3 desktop computers. I had all this stuff. And then basically I downsized to fit everything in my car. And I took a leap because I knew that this commitment I wouldn't be happy with this commitment, in 3, 5, and 10 years. So that's where I kind of have stepped onto this alternative path. But people really need to look at what are the commitments that you make. And I know that it sounds funny when you're talking about like a plant, but it's like people laugh. But then if you're the one laughing, how easy is it for you to just get up and let's say, can you go to Guatemala in 2 days? you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think like a good part of a good definition that I like to add into success is flexibility. You know, that those who lack flexibility, you know, is that successful? Is that what you want to be successful? And you know, so flexibility and freedom, I think, are two things to always be aware of on that sense. So
yeah, it's not the best everyman type of example, but I was just in New York talking with my buddy Nick Reese, and he told me about one of his friends basically is involved in charter aviation, and for some reason or another he got access to this private Cessna, and so he called up some friends in the area and said, hey, do you want to fly down to the islands and just hang out for a while? And can you do that? You know, if a friend was going to come to you tonight and said, hey, I've got a private plane, I'm going to take you for free down to Cancun or the Caribbean tomorrow, can you come with me? I mean, I'm not going to even ask, do you want to come? Of course, everyone wants to go, but you know, think, would you be able to do that?
right.
Could you get everything in order and then just leave? And a lot of people can't do that because of various commitments. And
They have, you know what, Scott? They have way too many plants. They just got.
they have too many plants. Let's just talk about plants. Let's use that as kind of like an analogy.
It's
to
a metaphor, yeah.
They have too many plants. Yeah, it's a metaphor. Plants are commitments, and so they have too many plants in their house, and they can't do that. They got to water the plants every day. So, yeah, I love, you know, personally being able to be one of the people that says yes to things like that. You know, if an opportunity comes by, I'm really happy that in most cases, if it's a good opportunity and I want to do it, I can just say yes and then arrange things to make that happen.
Yeah, I think it's you know, looking when I reflect on my life, what can I do? And I'll get into an example here. I look at all the time, what can I do to make myself, you know, I always tell people that if the path I chose to step on was for the reason that, and I'm not saying that I can just do this 100% of the time right now. You know, there are some things I'm still building my systems, so to say, but I want the freedom. I want the ability to do whatever I want whenever I want. You know, and yeah, you check your finances here and there, but having the financial means, having the resources, and not having so many commitments where you walk away from them and they fall apart. You know,
right.
Your relationships fall apart. Your plants die. You know, these things can. I like this. Plants.
It's a good metaphor.
It is a good metaphor. It really is a good metaphor because it's not. And because if you think about this, even metaphorically, plants are not. It's not like a dog. You know, like where a dog is crazy. You know, it's like a kid, but you got to. You know, you got to take it outside 3 times a day to.
Yeah, it's like having a baby. It
exactly.
Really
I think, yeah, definitely. But one of the things for me, and speaking of examples, which will sound silly to people, but I've gotten close to almost. I still get pieces every now and then, but I've almost reduced physical mail down to nothing.
Nice.
And it's been something that I've been working on for about you know, and even I've been working on this for about maybe pretty hardcore, probably for the past year and a half, maybe a little bit longer. More or less. But anytime I get a piece of junk mail, what I immediately do is I open it up. And I mean, when you get a junk email, it's really easy to just, you know, mark it as spam or unsubscribe or create a filter in Gmail. But you know what? Your mailbox, you can't create a filter to just get rid of mail you don't want. You have to
But do you know that there's an app out now called Paper Karma? Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard of Paper Karma.
You've not heard of that?
No.
Paper Karma. So it's for Android and iOS. It's a free application. Basically, this company partnered up with a bunch of the people that send out the junk mail, the catalogs, etc. Beforehand, you know, how are you going to stop a catalog? How do you get them to stop it? You know, what do you write into them? You know, who's going to read it? You know, there's pretty much no effective way of getting rid of junk mail. So they found that there is a solution to this, and they knew that a lot of people would use this service. You take a photo of your junk mail. And it's
genius.
Input into the system along with your address, and then they remove you. Because if an advertiser, you know, knows that you're not going to buy their product, they don't want to spend the money to send you, to create and then send you a catalog every month or whatever. So they're losing money. This allows for an automated system to basically take you off the mailing list. It's amazing.
I like that. And that's
paper karma.
That's paper karma. That's an app out there. So I'll tell you the getaway I do it. That I didn't use the app. It's funny, Scott, because I basically, most of my work is on the computer, and I practice. I don't always do this. I practice. I use the word practice a lot. I practice trying to disconnect from the internet. So I actually wanted to do a little bit of an experiment too. I downgraded. I got rid of my smartphone, and I have I think I showed it to you before. I got this really old school, like basic, phone. There's no internet access on here. I don't have it turned on. And it can't even handle, like, I can't even get my Gmail on here or anything. But I did want to disconnect. But where was I going with I wanted to go back to the mail thing. I don't know where I went on the cell phone thing. But anyway, coming back to the mail thing, what I do is when I get a piece of junk mail, I immediately open it up and I scan the thing front and back for a phone number. And right then and there, I call up the phone number, I talk to them, and I say, I'd like to be removed from your mailing list indefinitely. And 95% of the time, right away, they'll take down your name and your information, they'll take you off the list. And that has done 80% of my lifting in terms of getting rid of mail. Now, sometimes you get a catalog or something like with coupons to the supermarket, like these sorts of things, and there might not be a number on it, but but there's a company name called Red Flyer, or there's some name for it. Go to Google and type in Red Flyer, unsubscribe, or type in Red Flyer phone number, and then either find a form to unsubscribe from online or call them up, and it'll take time, and there's always going to be more stuff that comes in. Another thing I do to help with, because I know this sounds silly, it's like, look, the smallest things add up to the biggest things. And I look at that in expenses. When someone's, commitments and expenses, it's like, oh, this little service is $12 a month. Oh, that sounds innocent enough. Oh, and this one's $35. And then after a while, all of a sudden you're spending $2,400 a month on who knows what, a bunch of crap. So all small things are, add up to big things. So I know this example sounds silly with mail, but I'll tell you what, where I am now, I check my mail like maybe once or twice a week. And I get some mail still back up in Pennsylvania, but it's very, very infrequent. And if it does come, it's important tax documents or things of that sort. But not having that worry is that I know some other people in my life who get a shitload of mail, and they spend hours, opening the mail and sorting it. So, I have,
so antiquated.
Exactly. Jeez. So I have insurance payments, I have mortgage payments, I have bills, all that stuff. Everything is as automated as possible, whether it's a direct, debit from my bank account, or it's set up on a debit card or a credit card. You want to think about automating as much as you want to automate repetitive tasks to free up your time. I know I'm beating this one down, but anyways, reduce your physical mail. It will just make you feel a lot lighter and a lot more flexible in that sense.
Yeah, that's a good step towards getting rid of some of your plants. Definitely.
Yeah,
and it's that kind of stuff. I wanted to talk about traveling in general. I mean, that's one of those things, being attached to your mail or being attached to one location, that makes it tough to get out there and explore the world if that's what you want to do. And people think that money is the other thing that prevents them from traveling. And that's why you hear a lot of people say, oh, when I retire, I'm going to do this because I'll have enough money built up by then. Or I'm saving to go here. Maybe I'll be able to get there next year. But the experienced travelers, such as myself, I guess I can count myself in that category.
I'll nominate Scott as this guy's an experienced traveler.
All right, I don't want to sound like I'm full of myself trying to.
Scott, give me a little wink next time, and I'll introduce it for you.
Got to chime in, yeah. So people think that it's really expensive, and then when I tell them that no, chances are you're making more money than me, but you're not traveling. And they say, well, how is that? Well, it's because I don't pay for my flights, and I rarely pay for my accommodations. So that leaves me with the third category as far as expenses, which is food and drink. So I spend a lot of money on food and drink. But that's why I travel anyways, is to eat and to drink and to meet people. And so, travel within the country, food and drink, that's where all my money goes. And you can keep costs down in a lot of places. Of course, if you're in Paris, it'll be a little bit more expensive, but if you're somewhere like Thailand, you can you can effectively stay there for a month on $1,000.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's not hard at all. And so, I tell people, and then of course that gets people interested. And then, like just the other day, I was at a buddy's company, and everyone was welcoming me back from Africa, and I was talking to a few of them about traveling and got into this very conversation. And of course, they say, "Oh, how do you do that? How do you get your free flights?" And I said, "Well, I get my free flights because of airline bonus miles, from signing up for branded credit cards and whatnot." And then, of course, that leads into, "Oh, well, I don't like credit cards," or "How do you do that?" or "Teach me how." Very few people, I tell everyone the steps that I do. Very few people take my advice, which is normal. Yeah, anybody you can give advice to, there's about a less than a 10% chance they're going to take it.
Yeah.
But for the people that do, one of the people, the founder's wife, I told her about it while we were all in Colombia for Christmas and New Year's last year. Since then, she's gotten free flights for her and her husband down to Orlando, and they also now have enough for a trip to Paris later this year.
That's awesome.
She told someone else at the company about it. And so she's kind of like acting as my protege and just kind of spreading the good word as far as how to do this. It's simple. Basically, you go to a site that catalogs these deals, like thepointsguy.com, where he has all the latest deals and sign-up offers. You apply for a credit card. They are generally fee credit cards, so every year you have to pay a fee to use the card, except for in most cases that first year will be free. So use that first year, you spend whatever the minimal spending requirement is. Like it'll often be maybe $2,000 within the first 4 months of using it. So you hit that level, and then after that,
and what are some creative ways that you hit that minimum spending requirement to get these bonus points that you use for air miles?
For me, it's not tough because I can spend that much on a trip, just in food and drink and whatnot.
Right.
But for some other people, I recommend, if you can.
So the first thing you do is you just, instead of paying for things with cash or debit card, you use these cards.
Pay everything with a credit card. Yeah. If you can pay your rent on credit card, your utilities on credit card, your cell phone bill, I mean, it all adds up. It's not tough for the average person to spend $2,000 within a few months. If you're putting everything on that card, make that your primary card, your primary method of payment for everything, as much as you can. Once you hit that limit, that $2,000, who cares what you do with the card? You can throw it in a drawer or whatever. Just cancel it before the first year's up, so you don't have to pay that annual fee. And then you'll have those miles will be automatically deposited into your frequent flyer account. Cancel up the card, do it again with another card. Or if you're like me, do it with multiple cards at once. And there's a thing called credit card churning where you can actually cancel a card and then apply again as like a business. Username is a business name, which is a totally legit thing to do. Username as a business name is like a sole proprietorship.
Right.
And then get the business version of the card and then get another 50,000 miles. And to kind of show you how this builds up, American Airlines often has a promotion where you use their credit card, they'll give you 50,000 miles. So 50,000 miles will take you there and back from the U.S. to Japan, round trip. That's about a $1,500 flight if you were to buy it on the web. So by doing that, you've effectively gotten $1,500 from the credit card company.
Right.
Now, of course, they want you to get the card.
They want you to have debt.
They want you to have debt. They want you to have debt. And that's why they have these sign-up offers, because they want you to use their credit card to build up debt to owe them money. Well, if you just control your spending, which I know for some people is harder than others, but if you control it and just pay it off every month, well, there's no problem, because basically it's just like a debit card that you're paying at the end of the month, and one lump sum instead of as you go. That's how I like to think of it. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I don't like credit cards. They're evil, whatnot." I mean, it's the same thing when you say, "Oh, well, the whole do guns kill people or do people kill people?" It's something like that.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's your habits, your spending habits that make it bad. That's just a means to an end.
It's not the vehicle. It's the driver.
It's exactly. So some people just are really anti-credit card because of experiences they've had in the past, and that's fine. And this method may not be for them. But for those of us that can trust ourselves to spend wisely and who want to get these sign-up bonuses, well, I've traveled my last 10 international flights for free. And this adds up to tens of thousands of dollars. And then they say, oh, well, what about signing up for credit cards and canceling them and everything? Doesn't that hurt your credit score? No, I have an excellent credit score. I'm in the high 700s. And basically, when you cancel a card, it'll give a slight temporary ding to your credit score. So if you're going to apply for a loan, a mortgage, something like that, well, don't cancel any cards right prior, the few months prior to applying. But if you're not, you don't have to worry about it because it'll ding your credit score, 5 points, 10 points for up to 6 months.
It'll go back up too with your good
and it'll go back up.
It'll
history. Automatically go back up. Yeah. And it's just a temporary ding. And I've had no problem with it. I pay my cards off almost all the time. I pay them off in full every month. I don't owe the card companies any money, and I'm gaming the system so that every time I sign up for a card, on average, I'm getting $1,000 or $1,500 in airfare, and that allows me to travel all over the place for free. And then once I get there, I use a service like Airbnb to look for places to stay at, or couch surfing to stay with locals for free. And I've had amazing experiences. You can go to meetups too. Couch surfers have meetups all around the world. And that is another way for either low cost or free accommodations, which is, airfare and accommodations are generally the two areas that you spend the most in when you're traveling.
They're definitely
those are the two big
pillars,
ones. Yeah, with food and travel and drinks being the third pillar. But if you can take care of those first two expenses, well, you can take a lot longer vacation or trip if you want to, or you can put that money towards another trip. And so I just tell people, I'm not doing anything special. I'm not rich. I'm just kind of gaming the system. You call it trip hacking or travel hacking. You just kind of game the system. Credit card companies are trying to get you. Well, you get them. And the card companies know that this happens. I've been doing it for about 8 years now. Yeah. At any one time, I have close to about 500,000 miles saved up over a few different partners. They know this happens, but it's such a low percentage of people that do this that they just keep on with the offers, and they'll keep re-upping them. Sometimes I've gotten up to 100,000 miles for signing up for one credit card. 100,000 miles. It's 2 round trips to Europe, for instance. So. Yeah, it's an easy way to travel if you're on a budget, and a lot of people are. Who's going to say no to saving money?
Right. And Scott, I think this is such a topic of interest. I'm like, well, the whole time you're chatting, I'm like, man, I could easily we could break this one down, and I could probably pick your brain and help extract some good questions on here. This is something we'll
do a special episode.
Definitely
on that later on.
Keep posted. We're going to give you guys some more details for sure, and definitely a future episode. But I'm looking here, Scott. You tell me. I know that looking at the clock, we filled our time up it went by pretty fast today. So I don't know if you wanted to get into some more stuff, because as soon as you were telling me these stories about these travel hacking and these airlines and these accommodations, I know that people want more details. So, but I think just because of we're trying to keep within a little bit of a time budget here, that you'll have to tune in next time, and we will surely share with you guys more of these stories. And again, it goes back to and I'm gonna beat the horse. I was going to say beat the horse. What the hell is that? I hate these weird phrases that I say that they make no sense. Beat the horse. No, I'm not going to beat any horses, but I will drill some things into you guys, because I think some of these things that seem so simple are so impactful, basically. Really that creativity and that resourcefulness, whether you're traveling or you're living, can really make life a lot more fun, a lot more flexible, and will help you kind of step outside of the norm and do some cool, exciting, adventurous stuff. So, Scott, is there anything else that you want to add into this session? And these these apps and these websites that we've mentioned will be listed below this podcast. And if you're on Scott's site, that's www.scottbrills.com, and I'm over at breakthefear.com, and we'll have all these links below. And let us know what you guys like. If you want to hear any more details about some specific things, we got lots of details for you guys, but unfortunately we don't have all the time in there today. Scott, anything?
If you have a question, post it in the comments, and one of us will try to get back to you. And some of the stuff we'll be expanding on in future episodes, like travel hacking. So stay tuned.
Definitely. And if you guys Look, I don't really care about Twitter and Facebook, but if you think that there's somebody out there that'll value from this message, go ahead and zip them over an email and send them a link to this podcast. And do them a favor. And yeah, thanks. So on that note, folks, let's see. Let's give them a little call to action. You know,
yeah, end with a call to action. Yeah.
As soon as I said that, I blanked out. But anyway, just want to, I know sometimes you hear a lot of information all at once, but, my sort of secret is don't quit. If you have an idea, a project, a trip, something that you want to do, the trick is to not stop. Keep moving forward, keep plugging away at it, and keep moving closer towards your goals. So, Scott, anything on that note?
Yeah, I'd say for my call to action, it's go to somewhere like thepointsguy.com if you're interested in travel hacking and credit card bonus signups. Go there, educate yourself. It's a pretty resourceful site. There's a lot of links and a lot of information there. Go there and sign up for a card. See what happens. See how easy it is. Do it like we were talking about before. Just take the first step. Do it. See how it works out. If it's not for you, whatever. You don't have to do it anymore. But if you live in the U.S., because most of these offers, unfortunately, are for only U.S. citizens, because we love our credit cards. If you're a U.S. citizen, if you have any credit history, because you do have to have a little bit of credit history in order to get a lot of these cards, and you're interested in traveling, go over there, try it out, see what happens, and who knows, you may end up with a free ticket to Paris or wherever else you want to go.
Exactly. And if you don't have credit history, it's a great thing to build some up. I mean, and keep organized. I mean, I'm sure you do, Scott, but I have all of my credit card information, such as what my APRs are, when is a card 0%, airline miles, phone numbers, things of that. Put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and if
or a phone calendar. If you have to have a payment or you need to cancel a card, just put it in your calendar. That's an easy way to just set it and forget it.
Google Calendar, guys. Google Calendar. I mean, I could talk for an hour about how I use Google Calendar to just make life really easy, just really very simple things. But that'll be another topic for another time. So, hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. If you're with us this far, much appreciated. We will catch you next time. Stay tuned. And Scott, I will talk to you then, man.
See you then. Bye.
All right, later.